Hello and welcome to another episode of the Expanse Abridged Podcast series. Today we're on chapter 52, which is a Miller chapter of the first book in the series, Leviathan Wakes. So the last time, in the previous chapter, we saw Holden flying through space trying to keep up to Eros, which is moving incredibly fast because of the proton molecule, and eventually he realises if he's going to do that, everyone dies. So he's like, fuck it, they're going to launch a load of nukes at it instead, is their plan. Obviously, our boy Miller is there, so Holden was going to ring him up, and then Miller's like, they've got a problem, and now we kind of hop back a few minutes in time. Miller's going to encounter that problem he was talking about previously. And last time with Miller, he'd gone into Eros with his big bomb on his little wagon, and he's going to try and drive it into the middle, and then kill himself and set off the bomb. And hopefully stop Eros being able to navigate, and then Earth, Mars, whatever, can throw it into the sun, or basically stop it going directly to Earth. So we join Miller, and he's had that dead man switch, which is on his phone, he must touch his phone every 5 seconds, otherwise the nuclear bomb goes off. So if he was attacked by the proton molecule or incapacitated, the bomb still goes off, is the plan for that. So 1, 2, 3, Miller pushed down on the hand terminal, resetting the trigger again. The double doors in front of him have once been one of thousands of quietly automated mechanisms. They run reliably in their subtle magnetic tracks, maybe for years. Now something with the texture of tree bark grew like creepers around their sides, deforming the metal. So obviously he's gone into this, and everyone's been turned into soup or various antics by the proton molecule. So at this point, the people that live there have been turned into tree bark. Miller had to open a stuck door in less than 5 seconds while wearing an environmental suit. He tries again, shifted by a centimetre, the black flakes fall around, but that's all he can do in the 5 seconds. He grabbed the hand terminal again, reset the trigger. This shit just wasn't going to work. So basically, Miller's got this thing where he needs to keep the bomb needs to be able to go off if he gets incapacitated or attacked, because obviously we saw the zombies last time, and there's a worry, I think, from our characters that Miller could be attacked by the proton molecule trying to defend itself, because they know it does try and defend itself, which is why it dodged the Nauvoo earlier on. So Miller is like, oh fuck, this is going to take too long. And the thing is covered in all his bark and all his fungus, so the straps that are holding the fusion bomb to the cart, he loosens them a little bit, sticks his phone under there, and then scraps it back down and basically keeps the button pressed, which is good enough. So our boy Miller is playing fast and loose because he's got no choice as he keeps going through. So he scrapes off all his bark, he opens the doors, and the corridor beyond was nearly round. The dark growth had filled in the corners until the passage looked like a huge, desiccated blood vessel. The only lights were his suit's headlights and a million tiny, luminescent dots that swirled in the air like blue fireflies. When the Eros feed pulsed, so the feed being the kind of radio noise it gives off, like radio station Eros. When it pulsed, the fireflies dimmed and then returned. The environment suit reported breathable air of higher than expected concentrations of argon, ozone, and benzene. So throughout the chapter, as he gets further and further in, his suit's constantly reporting more and more kind of exotic chemicals, i.e. indicating like more advanced forms of life and chemical reaction going on. So at the moment, you've just got some like other chemicals. You go further in, there'll be more fancy stuff, is the idea. But also it's very cool, like looking down the corridor, like he's in the blood vessel. So he's already in a big boy, and how it's alive, and it's, very scary. So he looks down, he starts pushing the trolley again, centimetre by centimetre. No rest for the wicked, Julie Mao said in his mind. No peace for the good. The dark crust had started growing down the corridor, tendrils shooting out toward the airlock, keeping to the edges where walls met floor or ceiling. The blue glow had colonised the air. Eros was heading out the corridor as quickly as he was entering it, faster maybe. So in Miller opening that door, that kind of I've been there for ages, but enclosed, it had kept the proton molecule in, and as soon as he opens it, it starts expanding and growing very quickly, and it's quicker than Miller can even walk down. Like he's covered in a big suit, pushing a big wagon, but I think it just really hammers home. Like even the smallest bit of proton molecule on Earth would be the end, because it expands, it grows, it consumes all life. So he keeps pushing down, and he starts to recognise the corridors, because obviously Miller was here a while ago. It's where he escaped from with Holden. He'd died here once, he'd been poisoned, shot. These halls, or ones much like them, had been his battleground, his and Holden's. They were unrecognisable now. So he's going down, he gets back to the casino level, and the casino level, maybe like 20 to 30 chapters ago, was where everyone had been kind of rounded up, and it's where Holden and Miller had made their big escape, following some of the pro-security guards that had been hired to get everyone into their little gas chambers. And underneath the machines, some of the machines still stand, some of them are melted, some of them exploded, some of them are covered in goo. The card tables were still visible underneath mushroom caps of a clear, glutinous gel, or glutinous. Lining the walls and cathedral high ceilings, black ribs rippled with hair-like threads that glowed at the tips without offering any illumination. Something screamed, the sound muffled by his suit. So the idea is it's just really horrible, and Miller's having images of a boy being eaten by a large whale. Something grey and the size of Miller's two fists together flew by, almost too fast to see. It hadn't been a bird. Something scuttled behind an overturned vending machine. He realised what was missing. There had been 1.5 million people on Eros, and now there was just black crust. So Miller really starts us losing it, basically. He looks around, all these dark rills above him with their soft oceanic glow. Those were the corpses of Eros, recreated, human flesh, remade. A suit alarm told him he was starting to hyperventilate. Darkness creeped in on the edge of his vision. He sank to his knees. Don't pass out, you son of a bitch. Don't pass out. Or if you do, at least land so your weight's on the damn trigger. Julie put his hand on his. He could almost feel it, and it steadied him. She was right. There are only bodies. So he's really starting to lose it, even now Miller, who's meant to be like jaded as fuck from his job. And he has to kind of retreat into that as his one thing. So when you're a cop, you just got to do the job. So do the job, Julie Mao said to him. He nodded, he stood, do the job. So it's mainly like the horror element. They kind of cover it a bit, but that's the idea. Miller's gone into like a carnal pit. There's flesh everywhere. And in the meantime, the Eros feed starts changing. It starts going from the whale noises we had previously to the scratching of paper to being voices. It sounds like Hindi it's speaking. And he's kind of thinking to himself, what the fuck am I going to do? So he's swimming in the station. He needs to go somewhere to blow the bomb up. And he's kind of realising he's thinking about where he should go. And Julie Mao says, we go back to what we do know. So you know that something in Eros was growing from inside, but it hasn't adjusted the shape of Eros. Like, it'll still be the same footprint. You know that whatever's doing it has to use energy and shit, so it's going to be hot. So find the hot spot. And he wanders around his little room for a bit, figures out where the temperature is higher in the room, and heads down that corridor. So he's using his AI girlfriend, basically, to figure out how to set off a nuclear bomb. But in a good way, not in a incel ending the world kind of way. When he gets back to the cart, something golden with the soft look of heather was growing around the wheels. Miller scraped it off as best he could, but one of the wheels has developed a squeak. Nothing to be done about that. So even in like a couple minutes, like the organic life in Eros, it starts like colonising everything new and covering it. So he starts walking again, our boy Miller, on his sad little journey, and Eros is talking to him again. He says, the station is kind of talking. He goes, she's mine. And as he's listening to that, his body is slowly falling apart. His shoulders ache, the thing is winding even more. It's getting harder and harder to push the trolley. His thumb is tingling from pressing the button all the time. And he found himself looking forward to when the job was done. He imagined himself back in his hole, a six-pack of beer, some music on the speakers that had an actual composer instead of the wild, empty-minded glossolalia of the dead station. Maybe some light jazz. You ever thought the idea of light jazz would be appealing? So he's never seen B-movie. But anyway, he starts thinking about, I can't wait to be over and done with, which is peak Miller energy of like, his suicide is almost too much effort, and he's like, guys, this is a lot of work. So anyway, he keeps going down. A flock of softball-sized spider-like things crawled through the corridor, leaving a slick sheen of glowing slime behind them. It wasn't until he paused to knock one off the cart that he recognised them as severed hands, the trailing wrist bones charred black and remade. Part of his mind was screaming, but it was a distant one and easy to ignore. And he kind of goes on, you've got to respect the protomolecule. Like, it landed on Phoebe, it was supposed to land on Earth, turn a bunch of planets into protomolecule. It's having to adapt and do all this stuff. It's doing a bang-up job, Miller thinks. And he also starts thinking about how, like, the station itself, all the roads and corridors are as wide as they are, because back in the day, the Romans standardised roads to fit the width of an axle of one of their carts. And then these stations had that width because that was how big the Earth trucks were. And he's like, what would the alien do if it didn't have all of this, like, thousands of years of human knowledge? How would it create its stations? How would it create its tubes rather than follow these ambitious primates? So he keeps going. And as he's talking about that, he realises he's been standing still. He doesn't even know how long. It takes Julie Mao to kind of snap him out. The voices start kind of squealing over each other. So as the Eros feed squealed, a chorus of voices chattering in Russian and Hindi, clamouring over the old singular voice, and being drowned out in turn by a deep creaking howl. He keeps going along. Recognisable insects, flies, cockroaches, water spiders crawled along the thick white cables in purposeful waves. Tendrils of something that looked like articulated bile swept back and forth, leaving a film of scurrying larvae. They are as much victim of the protomolecule as the human population. Poor bastards. You can't take the razor back, Eros said, and its voice sounded almost triumphant. You can't take the razor back. She is gone and gone and gone. So it keeps going on, keeps walking in as the Eros station is now actually talking in sentences and saying, you can't take it back, it's gone, gone, gone. And Julia was waiting for him in the darkness as he walks along, and she's like staring at him. And she says, "How does it know?" Miller paused. Every now and then, all throughout his career, some daydreamed witness would say something, use some phrase, laugh at the wrong thing, and he'd know that the back of his mind had a new angle on the case. This was that moment. "You can't take the razor back," Eros crowed. Julie Mao says to him, "It was just ballistic, any ice bullet with the pressure molecule in deep freeze. It was aimed at Earth but missed and got dragged by Saturn into Phoebe. The payload didn't steer it, didn't drive it, didn't navigate. But it's navigating now. It's going to Earth. How does it know to go to Earth? Where did the information come from? It's talking. Where did the grammar come from?" Miller kind of closes his eyes. Eros goes, "You can't take the razor back. She's gone and gone and gone." And up until this point, razorback had been 2 words, no capital letters. Now it's 1 word, italics, capital R, i.e. the name of Julie Mao's ship. He goes, "Oh fuck, oh Jesus." The Miller starts shaking. The only one, he thinks the station was shaking, but it's only him. He's been there all this time. He should have known. Maybe he had. The dead of Eros weren't dead. Julia, Andromeda Mao were still alive. He was grinning so hard his cheeks ached. And he rings up Holden. He goes, "Hey Miller." Hey Miller. So Holden goes, "Hey Miller, how you doing?" And obviously we know from that context, Holden's just kind of enabled thousands of nukes to be launched at Miller's place. And the words were soft, apologetic, a hospice worker being gentle on the dying. An incandescent spark of annoyance lit his mind, but he kept his voice steady. "Holden," he said, "we have a problem." And we're back to where we were. So yeah, it's quite a fun one. I do like at the end, we still got the OG Miller, who's ringing up his mate again. The person he cried previously when he got kicked out of the ship. And he's like, "Don't talk to me like that, I'm annoyed." I think it's interesting. I think it's nice seeing Miller finally realise. I did allude to it like previous chapters, but I think the way they do it is quite cool. I also like the descriptions inside of like Miller going into hell, and even with his kind of desensitized like police mind, he struggles so much with it. I think that's really good. And obviously ending in Holden with a problem for the 2nd chapter in a row. It's peak Expanse, you just love it. But now we know the problem at least. And it's cool that Juliet is kind of alive inside. And it's interesting as well, like he's imagining the witness, or like Juliet in his head, but she's also alive, so how is he affected by the protomolecule and various things. It's just interesting the way he does it. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, and I hope you have a lovely week.